Have you ever wondered why some people seem to be constantly trapped in cycles of negativity, while others manifest abundance with apparent ease? What if I told you that the difference lies not in what they do, but in what they say? Every day, you speak approximately 16,000 words, creating vibrations that ripple through the quantum field of reality, programming your future in ways more profound than you can imagine. These sound frequencies don't simply disappear into thin air. They encode patterns that materialize in your physical experience, creating the very framework of your existence. Our words are not merely expressions of thought. They are creative forces that shape the invisible architecture of our destiny. Ancient traditions have long understood this principle. From the Sanskrit concept of vak siddhi, perfection of speech, to the Hebrew tradition where God spoke the world into existence, the power of the spoken word has been revered as the primary tool of manifestation. Modern quantum physics now confirms what mystics have known for millennia, that observation affects reality, and our verbal expressions are concentrated forms of that observation. Each time you declare, "I can't," "It's impossible," or "I'm not good enough," you're not merely describing your current state. You're actively creating neural pathways that reinforce those limitations. The vibrational frequency of your words creates resonance patterns that attract corresponding experiences into your life. Consider how certain phrases feel heavy in your mouth, while others elevate your energy instantly. This isn't coincidental, it's vibrational science at work. When you habitually use phrases like, "I'm broke," "I'm so stressed," or "I hate my job," you're not just expressing temporary frustrations, you're broadcasting specific frequencies that the universe interprets as commands to create more of those exact experiences. Your tongue becomes either the architect of your dreams or the saboteur of your potential, depending entirely on the vocabulary patterns you've unconsciously adopted. What makes this phenomenon so insidious is that most people remain completely unaware of it, attributing their recurring struggles to bad luck, circumstances, or other people, never realizing that they are actively sustaining these conditions through their daily speech. The truth is that your mouth is constantly casting spells, either constructive or destructive, and the world around you is simply responding to these incantations with mathematical precision. Today, we'll uncover how specific expressions are, programming you for limitation, and exactly how to recalibrate your verbal patterns to activate what ancient traditions called the divine power of speech, the ability to speak your ideal reality into existence. What if each word you speak sends ripples through the fabric of your reality, altering its structure at the quantum level? This isn't spiritual speculation but emerging science. Research in cymatics, the study of visible sound vibrations, demonstrates how specific frequencies organize physical particles into coherent patterns. When Dr. Masaru Emoto exposed water to different words, the water molecules formed either harmonious crystalline structures or chaotic, fragmented patterns depending solely on the words spoken. Consider the implications. Your body is 70% water, constantly being programmed by the vibrational quality of your speech. Neuroscientific research further confirms this phenomenon through studies on neural plasticity, showing how repetitive thoughts and their verbal expressions create dedicated neural pathways. UCLA neuroscientist Dr. Alex Korb discovered that negative self-talk activates the brain's stress response, flooding your system with cortisol that impairs cognitive function and weakens immune response. Conversely, positive affirmations stimulate the release of dopamine and serotonin, enhancing brain function and physical health. With each statement you make, you're essentially writing code for your biological operating system, determining whether it runs programs of vitality or deterioration. The field of psychoneuroimmunology has documented how our words impact our cellular function through what scientists call signal transduction, the process by which verbal expressions trigger biochemical responses. In landmark studies at the HeartMath Institute, researchers measured how different types of speech affected heart rhythm coherence, finding that negative verbal patterns created chaotic cardiac signatures while supportive, positive statements produced organized, harmonious patterns. This heart coherence doesn't just stay within your body. It generates electromagnetic fields that extend several feet beyond you, influencing your external environment and the responses you receive from others. What many don't realize is that your subconscious mind, which controls 95% of your behaviors and biological functions, cannot distinguish between actual events and vividly imagined scenarios created through your speech. When you repeatedly verbalize phrases like, "This always happens to me," or "I'm never going to succeed," your subconscious accepts these as commands rather than observations, mobilizing your entire biological and psychological system to manifest these statements as your lived experience. The words you speak are not just expressions of your reality, they are the very blueprints from which your reality is constructed. "I'll try. Maybe someday. If only I could." These seemingly innocent phrases are actually verbal contracts with limitation. Each time these expressions leave your lips, they create what linguists call semantic frames, mental structures that define how you perceive and interact with reality. These frames aren't just abstract concepts, they trigger specific neurological responses that limit your ability to recognize opportunities and solutions. For example, the phrase, "I'm trying to," neurologically programs hesitation and prepares you for potential failure rather than success. Your brain responds to this command by activating circuits associated with uncertainty rather than confidence, fundamentally altering your performance capacity. The words can't, impossible, and never are particularly damaging as they create absolute barriers in your neural architecture. Functional MRI studies show that when subjects use these definitive negations, the brain's creative problem-solving centers experience reduced blood flow and activity. Simultaneously, the amygdala, your brain's fear center, becomes hyperactivated, triggering fight-or-flight responses that block access to your prefrontal cortex where innovation and possibility thinking occur. What's most concerning is how unconscious this process becomes. After repeatedly using these limiting expressions, your brain begins to filter incoming information, selectively noticing only evidence that confirms these self-imposed limitations while becoming blind to potential solutions. Phrases that disconnect you from your power often contain qualifiers and conditionals that delay action and manifestation. Expressions like, "When I have more time," "After I get the promotion," or "Once I lose weight," create what psychologists call contingent reality constructs, mental frameworks that place your desired experiences perpetually in the future, never in the present where creation actually occurs. These verbal patterns establish neurological timelines that continuously extend beyond your reach, ensuring that your desired outcomes remain forever on the horizon but never within your grasp. This creates the frustrating experience of constantly chasing goals that seem to move further away despite your efforts. Victim language represents perhaps the most restrictive category of speech patterns, characterized by expressions that assign control to external forces rather than acknowledging your creative power. Statements like, "They made me feel," "I had no choice," or "That's just my luck," linguistically surrender your sovereign ability to choose your responses and create your experience. Research in epigenetics demonstrates that when individuals verbalize experiences from a victimhood perspective, it triggers genetic expressions associated with inflammation and cellular stress. Conversely, empowered speech activates genes associated with longevity and resilience. Your words don't just describe your genetic expression, they actively determine it. Take a moment right now to become aware of your most frequent expressions. What phrases automatically leave your mouth when you face challenges? Do you catch yourself saying, "That's just my luck," when things go wrong? Or, "I'm always running behind" when pressed for time? These aren't just casual observations. They're powerful programming statements that your subconscious mind interprets as commands to create matching circumstances. Your habitual expressions form what psychologists call your self-narrative, the story you tell about who you are and what's possible for you. This narrative isn't simply descriptive, it's prescriptive, establishing the parameters within which your life unfolds. Your verbal patterns typically fall into specific categories that reveal your deepest programming. Temporal phrases like, "I never have enough time," or "I'm always the last one to figure things out," create time-based limitations that manifest as perpetual rushing or delays. Identity statements such as, "I'm not a math person," or "I'm terrible with money," define fundamental aspects of your self-concept that become extraordinarily resistant to change because they're reinforced every time you speak them. Relationship declarations including, "All the good ones are taken," or "People always take advantage of me," establish interpersonal boundaries that repel the very connections you desire while attracting those that confirm your negative expectations. Pay particular attention to your speech during emotional triggers. These moments reveal your deepest programming. Notice how stress, fear, or anger automatically activate certain phrases that you may have inherited from family patterns. These expressions aren't random. They're conditioned responses that have been reinforced throughout your life, creating neural superhighways that your thoughts travel down automatically during challenges. The statement, "This always happens to me," might seem like an innocent observation of a pattern, but neurologically, it's a command to your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters reality, to specifically notice and create more instances that match this declaration. The most revealing exercise is to record yourself speaking naturally throughout a day. Then listen objectively to identify your verbal patterns. Most people are shocked to discover how frequently they use disempowering expressions without awareness. Notice not just what you say, but how you say it, your tone, volume, and emotional state while speaking certain phrases. These paralinguistic elements carry their own vibrational signatures that either amplify or diminish your manifestation power. What you'll likely discover is that roughly 70% of your speech consists of habitual patterns you've never consciously chosen, verbal programs running on autopilot that continue to create the same reality loops until you consciously interrupt and reprogram them. Subscribe to this channel now and type, "I'm reprogramming my reality with my words" in the comments to activate this frequency shift in your life. Most people never calculate the true cost of their verbal patterns, remaining unaware of how their everyday expressions systematically dismantle their dreams. Consider this. Research in behavioral economics shows that negative self-talk reduces problem-solving ability by up to 40% and diminishes overall performance in virtually every measurable domain. When you habitually say phrases like, "I'm not good at interviews," or "I always freeze under pressure," you're not merely describing past experiences. You're actively programming performance anxiety into your nervous system, ensuring that these limitations persist despite your conscious desires to overcome them. Beyond the personal impact, your words create ripple effects throughout your relationships and environments. Studies in organizational psychology reveal that teams led by individuals who use language focused on limitations experience up to 30% lower productivity and innovation compared to those led by people who verbalize possibility. Your words don't just program your reality, they influence everyone around you, either elevating collective potential or diminishing it. The phrases you casually repeat become contagious thought forms that shape group consciousness, meaning, your verbal habits have consequences far beyond your individual experience. The most significant cost of disempowering speech patterns is the creation of what neuroscientists call reality blindness, the inability to perceive opportunities and solutions that exist right before you. When you repeatedly verbalize limitation, your reticular activating system, the filtering mechanism in your brain, begins screening out potential pathways to success, allowing you to perceive only evidence that confirms your stated limitations. This neurological phenomenon explains why two people with similar capabilities can encounter the same circumstances, yet experience vastly different outcomes based solely on their verbal programming. Your words literally determine what possibilities remain visible to you. Perhaps most concerning is how these speech patterns compound over time, creating what researchers call deteriorating baseline expectations. Each time you verbalize a limitation, you mentally adjust what you believe is possible, gradually lowering your standards for life without even realizing it. This explains why many people find themselves living far below their potential, despite having once held grand visions. Their daily speech gradually eroded their expectation baseline until mediocrity began to feel normal and acceptable. The difference between extraordinary lives and ordinary ones often comes down to this single factor: the verbal standards individuals maintain through their consistent speech patterns. What if you could reverse engineer your reality by strategically choosing your words? This isn't metaphysical speculation, it's applied neuro-linguistic programming. When you consciously shift from saying, "I hope this works out," to "I am creating successful outcomes," you fundamentally alter your brain's filtering system. Your reticular activating system, which determines what information reaches your conscious awareness from the millions of data points constantly bombarding your senses, begins highlighting opportunities and solutions that were always present, but previously filtered out by your limiting verbal patterns. This explains why people often experience sudden lucky breaks after changing their speech. They haven't changed their external circumstances, only their neurological perception frameworks. Declarative speech, statements made in the present, tense with absolute certainty, creates what neuroscientists call priming effects that transform your cognitive function. When you consistently verbalize phrases like, "I am naturally confident," or "I create value in every interaction," these statements trigger your brain to release specific neurotransmitters that enhance performance in those exact areas. Harvard psychologist Ellen Langer's groundbreaking research on mindful speech demonstrates how shifting verbal patterns from conditional to declarative forms measurably improves cognitive function, immune response, and even observable physical capabilities within remarkably short time frames, often seeing measurable changes within 14 to 21 days of consistent practice. The vibrational quality of empowered speech creates what quantum researchers call field effects that extend beyond your physical body, influencing how others respond to you. Studies in interpersonal communication show that individuals who speak with certainty and possibility, even without changing their appearance or credentials, are perceived as more competent, trustworthy, and influential. This phenomenon occurs because the human nervous system unconsciously entrains to the dominant frequency in any interaction. When you speak with the resonance of conviction rather than hesitation, others' neurological systems naturally align with your verbal commands, fundamentally altering how the world responds to your presence. What makes this approach so transformative is that, unlike many manifestation techniques, conscious speech reprogramming works regardless of your current belief system or emotional state. By simply maintaining disciplined verbal patterns, even before you fully believe them, you establish new neural pathways that eventually become your default operating system. This explains why individuals facing seemingly insurmountable challenges can create extraordinary turnarounds by maintaining impeccable speech standards, even amid difficult circumstances. Your words don't just reflect your reality. They are the causal mechanism that creates it. And by maintaining verbal discipline during challenging periods, you literally reprogram the quantum field from which your future experiences emerge. The transformation of your reality begins with systematic verbal pattern interruption. Whenever you catch yourself saying phrases like, "I can't afford it," immediately stop and replace it with empowered alternatives such as, "I'm creating the resources for this," or "I'm exploring creative ways to make this happen." This isn't about positive thinking or denial. It's about neurological reprogramming through strategic language choices. Each interruption creates a critical pause in your automatic neural firing sequences, allowing you to manually override limiting programs and install new ones. Neuroscientists call this process self-directed neuroplasticity, the conscious reshaping of neural architecture through intentional thought and speech patterns. Create specific replacement statements for your most common limiting expressions, writing them down and practicing them until they become your new automatic responses. For example, replace "I'm so overwhelmed" with "I'm prioritizing what matters most," or transform "I'm terrible with money" into "I'm developing financial intelligence daily." The key is maintaining present tense, declarative statements that your subconscious mind interprets as current reality rather than future aspirations. Research in behavioral psychology shows that this consistent replacement strategy creates new neural pathways within 30-60 days, eventually making empowered speech patterns your default programming without conscious effort. Implement what linguists call presuppositional speech, language that assumes the desired outcome is already occurring. Rather than saying, "I hope I get the job," shift to, "When I start this position, I'll bring exceptional value through my unique approach to problem solving." This linguistic structure bypasses the conscious mind's objections and speaks directly to your subconscious, which accepts these presuppositions as established facts rather than possibilities. High achievers in every field instinctively use this pattern, creating neural certainty about outcomes that haven't yet manifested in physical reality but are already established in their internal programming. Accelerate your reprogramming through immersive environmental strategies. Record yourself speaking your new verbal patterns and listen to these recordings during transitional states like falling asleep or waking up, when your brain is most receptive to new programming. Post your replacement phrases where you'll see them multiple times daily. Most importantly, create accountability by sharing your verbal transformation commitment with someone who will gently correct you when you revert to limiting expressions. Studies in habit formation demonstrate that this multi-sensory, environmentally supported approach can reduce the typical reprogramming period from months to weeks, creating lasting neural pathways that maintain your new verbal standards, even during stressful situations when most people revert to old patterns. At the quantum level, your words create what physicists call standing wave patterns that organize energy into specific formations. When you repeatedly verbalize certain phrases, you're establishing electromagnetic frequencies that attract corresponding particles and circumstances into coherent patterns that eventually materialize as your physical reality. This isn't metaphysical theory. It's the practical application of quantum field mechanics. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Max Planck stated, "All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Your speech is the interface between your consciousness and this intelligent field from which all physical reality materializes." Recent research in epigenetics reveals how specific speech patterns trigger what scientists call gene expression modulators, factors that determine which genetic potentials become activated in your cells. Dr. Bruce Lipton's groundbreaking studies demonstrate that our verbal expressions create specific biochemical environments that either suppress or activate genetic expression. When you consistently verbalize limitation through phrases like "everyone in my family struggles with weight," or "heart disease runs in my genes," you create the exact biochemical environment that activates those genetic potentials. Conversely, empowering speech patterns trigger the expression of genes associated with longevity, resilience, and optimal functioning, literally reprogramming your biology through your words. The phenomenon known as quantum entanglement explains why your verbal patterns don't just affect your immediate experience, but extend across time, influencing future events before they occur. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, where quantum particles instantaneously affect each other, regardless of physical separation. This scientific principle explains why consistently holding specific verbal patterns today creates seemingly coincidental opportunities weeks or months later. Your words don't just describe current circumstances. They establish vibrational instructions that organize future possibilities into alignment with your verbal commands, creating what appear to be synchronicities, but are actually the precise mathematical consequences of your speech patterns. What makes verbal reprogramming so powerful is that unlike many manifestation techniques, it doesn't require perfect emotional alignment or belief to be effective. Even when you feel doubtful or discouraged, maintaining disciplined speech patterns creates what quantum physicists call field coherence, organized energy structures that persist independently of your emotional state. This explains why individuals facing seemingly impossible circumstances can create extraordinary breakthroughs simply by maintaining impeccable verbal standards regardless of their temporary feelings or external evidence. Your consistent speech. Patterns establish quantum instructions that continue organizing reality according to your commands, even during periods when your emotions fluctuate or circumstances temporarily suggest otherwise. Beyond basic reprogramming lies the practice of quantum language patterning, strategically structured verbal formulations that activate specific neurological and energetic responses. One such pattern is the identity transfer statement, where you declare "I am," followed by the precise quality you wish to embody. Phrases like "I am unlimited abundance in expression" or "I am unstoppable creative force" are not merely affirmations, but neurological activation codes. These statements bypass the analytical mind's objections and speak directly to your cellular intelligence, triggering what epigeneticists call immediate early gene responses that begin altering your biological functioning within seconds of verbalization. Practice speaking these identity statements with full sensory engagement, feeling the vibrational quality of each word resonating through your body. Implement future memory speech, a linguistic technique where you verbalize future desired experiences in past tense with sensory-rich detail. Rather than saying, "I want to become financially independent," shift to, "I remember how it felt when I achieved complete financial freedom, the sense of security, the expanded possibilities, the joy of generosity it enabled." This pattern exploits a fascinating phenomenon in brain function. Your neural architecture processes vividly described memories and imagined scenarios through the same pathways. By consistently verbalizing future experiences as completed memories, you create neural recognition patterns that your brain begins seeking to complete, fundamentally altering your decision-making and opportunity recognition to align with these memories. Master coherence commands, declarations that simultaneously program your conscious mind, subconscious patterns, and energetic field. These triple-layered statements begin with clear intention, incorporate emotional activation, and conclude with absolute certainty of completion. For example, "I now activate unlimited abundance in all forms," intention, feeling profound gratitude for the continuous flow of prosperity in my life, emotional activation, knowing that this is already my reality, expressing in increasingly visible ways, certainty. This structure creates what neuroscientists call whole brain synchronization, aligning your analytical left hemisphere, your intuitive right hemisphere, and your emotional limbic system into coherent operation, dramatically accelerating manifestation by removing internal resistance. The most powerful technique is reality anchoring through strategic verbal loops that continuously reinforce your new programming throughout daily activities. Create trigger response patterns that use common experiences as prompts for empowered declarations. For example, each time you see your reflection, silently declare, "I am witnessing the physical expression of infinite potential." When you handle money, affirm, "I am the conscious gateway through which abundance continuously flows and expands." When facing challenges, state, "This is the perfect opportunity to demonstrate my unlimited creative capacity." These ambient programming loops maintain continuous manifestation instructions throughout your day, creating what quantum physicists call probability collapse, the transformation of potential realities into definite experience through consistent observation and declaration. The ultimate transformation occurs when conscious speech becomes your natural state rather than a practiced technique. After 60 to 90 days of consistent verbal discipline, you'll experience what neuroscientists call automaticity, the point at which your reprogrammed patterns become your default neural pathways, operating without conscious effort. At this stage, you no longer need to vigilantly monitor your speech. Your natural expressions automatically align with your highest intentions because you've fundamentally recalibrated your neurological baseline. This is when the most profound manifestations begin appearing in your experience, not as occasional coincidences, but as your consistent reality, because your entire electromagnetic signature has been permanently altered through your verbal recalibration. Your transformed verbal patterns will naturally elevate everyone you encounter through what physicists call harmonic resonance. Just as a tuning fork causes nearby objects to vibrate at the same frequency, your precisely calibrated speech patterns create resonant fields that automatically uplift the consciousness and capabilities of those around you, without any deliberate attempt to influence them. This explains why conscious speakers become natural leaders and change agents in every environment. Your words don't just program your reality, they establish vibrational templates that help others break free from limitation simply by being in your presence and experiencing the frequency of your speech patterns. As your externalized reality increasingly reflects your verbal programming, you'll discover that maintaining disciplined speech during apparent setbacks becomes your most powerful manifestation tool. When challenging circumstances arise, as they sometimes will even with perfect programming, your response determines whether these situations become temporary fluctuations or new persistent patterns. By maintaining verbal sovereignty, especially when external evidence contradicts your declarations, you demonstrate mastery over reality rather than submission to appearances. This is the ultimate test and proof of your conscious creation capacity. Not the absence of challenges, but your verbal response to them. The journey of verbal manifestation ultimately reveals that you are not merely influencing reality with your words. You are the conscious center from which reality itself emerges. Your speech is not just a tool for creation, but the very mechanism through which universal intelligence expresses itself through your unique perspective. As the quantum physicist Max Planck stated, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." Your words are the bridge between pure consciousness and materialized experience, the sacred technology through which potential becomes actual. By maintaining impeccable verbal standards, you aren't just changing your life, you're fulfilling your fundamental purpose as a conscious portal through which the infinite expresses itself in increasingly expanded and beautiful forms.